Our final Maldives destination was on the southeast corner of the Ari Atoll at the Vilamendhoo Island Resort. This resort and many others in the Maldives is accessible primarily by twin-engine seaplane. The seaplane lands in a lagoon near the resort and uh, stops at a dock where we're transferred to a boat that takes us to the resort. The planes hold about 15 passengers. They are fairly relaxed. You'll see in a moment that there's no cabin door to protect the pilots, and the pilots are barefoot. If you're into snorkeling or diving, you've got to be intrigued by atolls, and this country is entirely atolls. Here's an example. Just out the window here, you can see, I can't count them, but probably 15 atolls in various shapes and sizes. There are amazing fish around all these places. In addition to the fish, there are all kinds of coral, like that delicate one that was shown at the very first. And the corals come in many shapes and sizes. Some are flexible, some are rigid. Turtles weren't nearly as plentiful here as they were in some of the other places that we visited. This is a giant moray eel. You can see both ends of him. He's kind of coiled up in the middle. Here are a couple of different corals. And it might even be a ray at the bottom. I didn't see it when I was there. I didn't notice it there, but I see it in the picture. This one's a blue spotted grouper. These are small examples of tube sponges. These are bluefin trevally jacks. Another common lionfish, scourge of the reef. This little show-off is a red-toothed triggerfish. You probably recognize by now these are Clark's anemone fish and chromis. This is the only lobster we saw on the whole trip, and we only saw just the front of him here. This is a parrotfish in a different disguise than we've seen before. These are blue surgeonfish and gold-ring bristletooth surgeonfish. Our friend the spotted unicornfish, and here I can finally see his spots. A black pyramid butterfly fish, frequently seen in big schools. An orange striped triggerfish with a sea cucumber in the background. This is a female parrotfish. It may have been a male in the past, but parrotfish do change from male to female. Six-bar wrasse and a gold ring bristletooth surgeonfish. Most of the sea cucumbers were brown and black. This one was a bright red. Trumpetfish come with various colors, gray, yellow, and sometimes spotted like this one. This is a bridled parrotfish. It's the coloring that we see in most places around the world that we've been. This is an Indian black triggerfish. Look quick, leopard flounder. I think this is a white spot rabbit fish. This is the only eagle ray I saw at Vilamendhoo. He probably was fairly small, maybe a 2 foot to 2.5 foot wingspread. A spotted box pufferfish here. And I got to watch some squid. These are probably, 10 inches to a foot long. Oh, yeah, 10 inches to a foot long. And notice they swim forward, they swim backward. They can go quite fast. They have, there's their tentacles sticking out toward the rear. And at the head of the tentacles, there are a couple of big eyes. This one is kind of alone, and there's a group of three nearby. Swimming in perfect formation, like I've only seen them once before, and they were four in formation there too. That was in St. Thomas. Unfortunately, they're not doing a color show as they can do. They're most interesting creatures. This is a fairly common type of sea star here. This is one of the few great blue herons that like to hang out in front of our villa. In most any short swim here, you'll see probably 15 different kinds of fish while you swim 20 or 30 feet. It's an amazing place. These are some parrotfish being cleaned by cleaner wrasse, those little fish that are black with blue stripes. Here we have Indian bannerfish on the left, and above it's a leer tail grouper. According to some references, this is a juvenile oriental sweetlips, and it morphs into something that looks entirely different. The fish under this coral with the stripes is a mature oriental sweetlips, and it's my guess that the silver one is in the transition between the juvenile and the adult. The larger fish here with an orange outline is a lipstick tang. And these are neon fusiliers. Here's a better view of that rabbitfish we saw earlier. The sea cucumber is a scavenger. Look at the left end. Watch those tentacles or arms or whatever you call them, just reaching out and sucking everything they can off the rocks or the coral. And here you see one of those sea cucumbers crawling along. I couldn't tell what all the excitement was about down here, but it attracted the eel as well as a bunch of parrotfish and other fish. Whatever it was certainly a major frenzy. That long silverfish is a trumpetfish. This one is a Picasso triggerfish. The green fish is a bird-nosed wrasse. A barred thick-lip wrasse. And another, along with some sergeant majors. And the orange-headed one is a slingjaw wrasse. You can see here why this fish is called a lipstick tang. We saw this type of parrotfish in several places, but nowhere else in the world so far. An Indian triggerfish showing off his 3D freedom. Guizhou, our guide for our manta dive. Here's a white-tip reef shark just cruising. He's probably 7 feet long or so. Another 6 to 8 foot white-tip reef shark. Look at all the little fish in between him and us. The quantity of fish in this area was just amazing. A yellow pufferfish, bright yellow I might add, and lots of other fish too. Another Indian triggerfish. This is a spider conch shell. This is the beginnings of a cabbage coral. Our first contact with a manta. He's about 12 feet from tip to tip. The food supply here must be pretty impressive because there are certainly a lot of fish. Napoleon wrasse with a jack behind. Another white-tip shark gliding by effortlessly. We anchored ourselves to rocks to watch the manta show. This was supposedly a manta cleaning station, but it looked like these mantas were feeding. They're certainly graceful, magnificent, and very, very large. And with all their size, it's amazing. They don't seem to touch the rocks at all. They come very, very close with those wingtips, but they don't ever seem to touch. Mantas can usually be found at this point. It's called Manta Point. It's on a tila, which is T-H-I-L-A. That's a subsurface island. It's within the Ari Atoll. If you look at Google Maps, and you go to satellite view, you zoom in, you can see a lot of these tilas within the various atolls. They're really numerous. They're just amazing places, just full of sea life. With all the small fish that are there, you might think that the mantas are feeding on the fish, but they're not. They filter microscopic plankton from the water, and that's their diet. The black and white fish that look like rockets are scissor-tail gobies. We have 3 mantas here and an incredible amount of smaller fish. This and several succeeding videos at this site were taken by our dive master, and I have included those because in some cases they're clearer than mine, have better views, and they also show the divers, including us, and how we go about watching the action. Uh, you'll see we anchor ourselves to the rocks and just try to stay low so we don't get in the way of the mantas. Our dive master did find, however, that if he got behind us and made hand signals, it made the mantas a little bit curious and it brought them closer to where we were. The water itself is quite clear here, although it seems a little cloudy. I believe that a lot of the cloudiness is the plankton that's in the water. That's what attracts the mantas. That's what they eat. They tend to be very small things, small creatures, many of them clear, but they do limit the visibility in the water. Diane and I are the 2 divers to the right in this video. One of our dive master's theories is that the mantas will sometimes come close to us so that they can get tickled by the bubbles. For this dive, I didn't have my flashlights attached to my camera. This is my setup with just the camera. Those fish that are the larger ones that are staying very close to the mantas and sometimes attached to the mantas are remoras. They also follow and attach themselves to sharks and whale sharks, other large creatures of the sea. But there's more here than just mantas. This is a map pufferfish, and also we have turtles here. This one is doing some grazing on the coral. Another giant moray eel with a cleaner wrasse. Our dive master was particularly intrigued by this emperor fish. In his thousands of dives, he'd never seen one change color as this one is doing right now. It came in silver, and when it leaves, it'll be essentially black. Near the end of our dive, we saw this 3 to 4 foot feather-tailed stingray laying on the bottom, and he decided to move while we were there. More boxfish. On a night dive during the previous week, I had seen a trumpet fish turn his stripes on and off, and I thought it might be my imagination. But here I see a trumpet fish during the daytime in shallow water doing the same thing. I've heard that some people try to feed the morays. You can see why they might sometimes lose fingers, and people do. I don't do that. We've seen sergeant majors in most every place we have snorkeled. Here's a handsome combination of an oriental sweet lips, surgeonfish, and blue striped snappers, and a good school of surgeonfish. This is a black feathery coral. These are raccoon butterfly fish. This is a clouded moray eel. It's the only one I saw on the trip. They're much smaller than the giant morays. In the other places in the Maldives where we snorkeled and dived, I don't believe we saw these red-toothed triggerfish, but they were among the most common fish on the Ari Atoll where we were. These are schooling bannerfish. This might be some kind of cave wrasse. A pair of Indian bannerfish. They're usually seen in pairs. These are black butterfly fish and sergeant majors. A 4 to 5 inch long wrasse. This is a 3 to 4 foot long black tip reef shark. He just kind of sailed right by me. Didn't look like he noticed me at all. That's typical of the way the sharks behave. This is another very different coloration of a parrotfish. Black triggerfish, blue surgeonfish. 3 very different kinds of coral. This looks to me like some kind of snapper. This is a striped surgeonfish. I had an opportunity at the resort to do a night dive using a blue light for illumination. The light I had was very dim, so it was very discouraging. I didn't see nearly as much as I should have seen. However, we did see a lionfish, and after I took the picture with the lionfish, I took one using white light, the flashlights that I have normally attached to my camera, to show the difference. Here is coral under the black light, followed by the same coral underneath white light. These last 2 photos were taken from a distance while the subjects were lighted with the stronger lights that the other divers had, including this lionfish again. Back on land, there are a couple kinds of lizards. This fellow was fairly patient until he wasn't, and then he threw up a cloud of dust and hit it out. Needlefish are usually seen up near the surface. The spotted grouper on the right is a good match for the coral that you see on the left. This is the second time I've seen this strange behavior of a trumpetfish trying to essentially ride along on another fish. The other one was a pufferfish. And oriental sweetlips maintaining station so he can be cleaned. These blue surgeonfish are either playing or doing a mating game of some kind. In the meantime, a cleaner wrasse is trying to clean one or both of them. Interesting behavior. I believe this is the only sailfin surgeonfish I saw on this trip. Where we entered the water to swim around the island, there were a number of these small, 2.5, 3 foot sharks. It wasn't unusual to see high densities of fish like this, various different kinds, all cruising around. The colorful one is a royal angelfish. The fish at the bottom appears to be a small-tooth emperor. I believe this is a spotted grouper of some sort. Napoleon wrasse. A giant clam among several types of coral. A black spotted pufferfish. I've seen yellow-striped goatfish many places in the world, but seldom in schools. I believe these are small-toothed cardinal fish, and I don't really know what their little dance is, but kind of cute. This stonefish is green. He takes up most of the screen. He's very difficult to see. You might want to pause here and see if you can find him. This is a bird-nosed wrasse. They're difficult to film because they move around so fast. These are gold ring bristletooth surgeonfish. That was a peacock rock cod. Back to the surgeonfish. The active fish on the right is a parrotfish, to the right of the sea slug. To the left is a peacock rock cod. These are another variation of the gold ring bristletooth surgeonfish. This one is a blue face angelfish. Our friends the Clark's anemones in all sizes. Every day these guys were bringing more sand to our beaches. The sun is setting on our last day in this paradise. This sad group is heading out on the plane before ours. Now we're returning to my videos and photos. This is a great blue heron just outside our bungalow. With the dining hall behind us and the sea in front of us, we're finishing our final breakfast on the island. There were herons in front of our bungalow most of the time while we were at the resort. We would like to have stayed longer, but it was time to go home.